There are childhoods shaped by love, and there are childhoods shaped by survival. Arnold Schwarzenegger grew up in the kind that leaves marks you cannot see, but never forget. Before he was a legend, before he was the Terminator, before he became governor of California, he was simply a frightened boy in a small Austrian house, listening to the heavy footsteps of a father whose anger could turn a peaceful evening into a battlefield. Arnold was born into a home ruled by discipline, silence, and fear. His father, a former military officer with a violent temper, believed weakness was a disease. He pushed his sons with punishments instead of guidance. He favored Arnold's older brother, demanded perfection, and treated mistakes like crimes. And in that pressure, in that cold space where affection rarely lived, Arnold learned one truth very early. No one was coming to save him. He would have to build his strength alone. And strangely, that darkness became the spark. While other boys played in the fields, Arnold studied the bodies of champions. While others complained about chores, he imagined escape routes. He did not simply dream of a better life. He swore to rip one from the world with his bare hands. But promises made in pain are powerful, and Arnold was about to make one that would change the course of his life forever. The day he discovered bodybuilding, it felt less like a hobby, and more like destiny reaching out to him. A chance not only to gain muscle, but to build a shield strong enough to defy everything his childhood tried to crush. Yet he knew one thing: muscles alone would not be enough. If he wanted to escape that home, that town, that life, he would have to do something almost no one around him believed possible. He would have to leave Austria behind forever. And the price he paid to chase that dream would be far higher than anyone guessed. Before Arnold could chase America, he had to survive one last cage: the Austrian army. Every young man was required to serve, and Arnold entered with the same quiet fire he carried his whole life. But discipline in the military was nothing compared to the discipline he had already known at home. What frightened others felt familiar to him. What exhausted them only sharpened him. Yet even here, his dream refused to stay silent. In 1965, the Army announced a bodybuilding competition. The winner would earn recognition, maybe even a future outside the gray walls of duty. Arnold knew this was his chance. There was only one problem. The event was held in Germany. Soldiers were not allowed to leave their base. Permission was impossible. So, he did the unthinkable. He escaped. He slipped away like a man whose entire life depended on a single decision. And in many ways, it did. He traveled alone, competed alone, and won alone. When he stepped on stage with a body built from hunger, discipline, and pure belief, the judges saw not a soldier, but a rising force. He returned to base in victory and was immediately thrown into military jail. For a week, he slept on a hard bunk, eating barely enough to stay focused. But the punishment did not break him. It confirmed something he had always suspected: he was meant for more than following orders set by men who had stopped dreaming long ago. When the officers finally released him, they looked at the trophy he carried and realized the truth. This young man was different. He earned their respect. They even granted him special permission to train. But Arnold had outgrown the barracks. His dream was too big for Austria, too big for Europe, too big for anything except the one place he believed destiny lived: the United States of America. And with almost no money, no connections, and barely any English, he made a decision that would change history. He would leave everything he knew behind and gamble his entire life on a new world. When Arnold stepped off the plane in 1968, he was 21 years old and carrying a suitcase full of clothes, a body full of muscle, and a head full of dreams he could barely translate into English. He understood almost nothing people said to him. Simple conversations felt like puzzles with missing pieces. But he was stubborn. He refused to let language become a wall. America did not greet him with open arms. It greeted him with long hours, low pay, and a loneliness he had never felt before. He worked construction with Franco Columbu, the man who would become his closest friend. During the day, they carried bricks and mixed cement. At night, Arnold studied English until his eyes burned. His accent was thick. People laughed, but every insult became fuel. He lived in a tiny apartment that smelled like sweat and old paint. He pinned photos of champions on the wall, not for decoration, but for survival. Every morning he repeated the same promise, "I will win. I will change my life." And he meant it. The gym became his church. Training was not about vanity. It was the only place where he felt in control. While the world outside seemed too fast and too loud, inside the gym, he understood everything. Effort, pain, progress. Those things spoke his language. Then the victories began. First, small titles. Then, bigger ones. And then the crown Mr. Olympia. Not once, not twice. 7 times. The boy from Austria became the most powerful figure in bodybuilding history. America finally noticed the man it once ignored. But success only opened a new door, and behind it stood Hollywood. A world brighter, louder, and far less forgiving. Executives looked at Arnold and saw nothing but problems. Your accent is strange. Your body is too big. Your name is impossible to pronounce. They told him to quit before he embarrassed himself. They had no idea who they were talking to. Arnold had escaped a brutal childhood. He had survived the army. He had crossed an ocean. There was nothing Hollywood could throw at him that would make him bend. But the truth was harsh. He still had no real acting career. Not even a chance. Until one unexpected role, one line, would change everything. Hollywood likes to pretend it can see talent coming from miles away. But when Arnold stood in front of casting directors for the first time, they saw nothing. Some even struggled not to laugh. One producer said, "You look like a walking mountain. No one will believe you are a real person." Another shook his head and added, "Your accent is too heavy. Your name is impossible. You will never make it here." Arnold heard these words so many times, he could have repeated them in his sleep, but he refused to accept them. He remembered every slap from his childhood, every punishment from his father, every dark night in the army barracks. Compared to all that Hollywood's insults were nothing. Still, rejection hurts even for the strongest man. His first big role was a disaster. Hercules in New York. Bad costume, bad script, bad acting. They even dubbed his voice because the studio hated his accent. Arnold watched the film and felt his stomach twist. He wondered if everyone had been right. Maybe he really did not belong in movies. But even in humiliation, he kept studying, training, watching every film he could. He learned how to speak more clearly. He learned how to use his size as an advantage instead of a curse. He learned how to perform, not just pose. Then, destiny stepped in, wearing a faded jean jacket and holding a storyboard. James Cameron. Cameron studied Arnold not as a joke, not as a stereotype, but as a presence. He saw something the others missed. Something cold. Something unstoppable. Something perfect. He did not want Arnold to play the hero. He wanted him to play the machine, the Terminator, a role with almost no dialogue, a role that turned Arnold's flaws into weapons, a role that did not need charm, only power. When Arnold walked onto that set, he did not know he was about to change cinema. He only knew one thing. He finally had his chance. But what happened next? No one in Hollywood was prepared for. When Arnold first read the script for The Terminator, he did not see himself as the villain. He thought the hero role made more sense. James Cameron disagreed. "You are not the hero," Cameron said. "You are the force that cannot be stopped." Arnold hesitated. Playing a machine with almost no dialogue felt risky. No humor, no charm, no smile. Just silence and destruction. But Cameron had a vision, and Arnold trusted vision more than comfort. Then he read one line. "I will be back." Simple, direct, cold. He practiced it over and over. Not dramatic, not emotional, just mechanical. And the way he delivered it became one of the most iconic moments in film history. When The Terminator released in 1984, audiences did not see an Austrian immigrant. They did not see the boy who escaped the army, or the man Hollywood once mocked. They saw something new, a cinematic force, a presence unlike anything they had witnessed before. Arnold was no longer too big. His accent was no longer a problem. His name, once considered unmarketable, was suddenly unforgettable, and his rise was explosive. Next came Commando, where he turned raw power into entertainment. Then Predator, where he faced a creature as unstoppable as himself. Total Recall, a mix of action and science fiction. Kindergarten Cop, which proved he could make people laugh. And Terminator 2, one of the most successful films of all time, transforming him from a villain into a global hero. Arnold became the highest-paid actor in Hollywood. Directors waited months for him. Studios gambled millions on him. Children imitated his lines on playgrounds. His shoulders carried the entire action genre for a decade. But for all the glory, fame carries a silent cost. Success can build palaces. It can also build pressure. And behind the muscles, behind the jokes, behind the legendary smile, Arnold was facing a very different challenge. One far more dangerous than any villain he fought on screen. A challenge waiting at home. One that would take years to reveal itself. And when it did, it would destroy the life he believed was unshakable. To the outside world, Arnold Schwarzenegger had achieved the impossible. Fame, wealth, power, and then something even rarer, a place inside one of America's most iconic families. Maria Shriver, elegant, intelligent, a respected journalist, and a member of the Kennedy dynasty, the closest thing America has to royalty. When Arnold married her in 1986, the world believed he had stepped into a perfect life. A fairy tale, a golden chapter, written by destiny. And for a long time, it felt true. They built a home filled with warmth, laughter, and 4 beautiful children. Maria became Arnold's anchor, his guiding voice, the calm to his ambition. She helped him enter politics. She helped him soften. She helped him become more than a movie star. To the public, they were the picture of stability, a power couple, a symbol of what love could look like under the spotlight. But every perfect photograph has corners the camera cannot see. While Arnold worked on film sets around the world, while Maria built her career and protected their family, a secret was growing silently inside their home. A secret that would remain hidden for more than a decade. Because in that same household lived the woman who cared for their children, the woman who cleaned their rooms, the woman Maria trusted every day. Mildred Baina. Arnold carried the truth deep inside him, a truth he refused to face, a truth he hoped would fade with time. But secrets do not fade. They grow heavier. And this one had a heartbeat. A boy. A son who looked more like Arnold with every passing year. The guilt lived quietly in Arnold's chest. He tried to be a good father, a good husband, a good man. But some mistakes are too large to outrun. Even for someone who spent his entire life running toward the extraordinary, and one morning, years later, Maria Shriver would look at her husband and at the child she had watched grow up in her own home, and she would see what she had missed all along, the truth. A truth powerful enough to destroy everything Arnold had built. The truth did not explode in a dramatic confession. It surfaced in something far more painful recognition. One quiet day, Maria Shriver began to notice what everyone else had avoided seeing: the shape of the boy's face, the jawline, the eyes, the way he moved. The resemblance was no longer subtle. It was undeniable. She walked into a room carrying a question. She walked out carrying the end of her marriage. When Maria confronted Arnold, he did not dodge. He did not deny. He did not hide behind excuses. He simply said the words that shattered the home they had built together. "It is true." And with that, the world shifted. Maria left the house that same day. Not because she stopped loving him, but because betrayal from someone you trust is like a wound that keeps bleeding, no matter how tightly you hold it. When the story reached the public, the reaction was immediate. Shock, outrage, headlines that spread like wildfire. The world had known Arnold as the champion, the action hero, the governor. No one was prepared to see the man who had stood beside world leaders and inspired millions, now standing alone, stripped of the perfect image he carried for decades. But the most painful part was private. 4 children who had to process the truth. A wife who had supported him through every rise in his career. A home that once felt sacred, now filled with silence. And at the center of it all stood a teenage boy, Joseph Baena, who never asked to be a symbol of scandal. Arnold had kept his identity private to protect him, but once the secret was out, Arnold made another decision. He would take full responsibility. He supported Joseph financially. He became present in his life. He refused to treat him as a mistake, because the boy was not a mistake. The mistake was the lie. But acceptance does not erase consequences. The divorce was inevitable. The trust was broken. The fairy tale was gone. And Arnold had to face the one truth he had avoided his entire life. Strength cannot protect you from your own choices. He had conquered bodybuilding. He had conquered Hollywood. He had conquered politics. But now he would have to conquer something much harder: redemption. Long before the scandal erupted, Arnold had already stepped into a battlefield far more ruthless than Hollywood American politics. In 2003, California was drowning in crisis. Massive debt, a collapsing economy, public anger boiling over. It was chaos, and in the middle of it stood a man no one expected, Arnold Schwarzenegger. People laughed when he announced his run for governor. They mocked his accent, his movie background, his past. But California was desperate for something different, something bold, something that felt like leadership without fear. And that is exactly what Arnold knew how to deliver. He won by a landslide. They called him the Governator. The immigrant who once could not speak English now led the largest state in America. But power always carries a cost. His 8 years in office were a storm of victories and backlash. He pushed environmental reforms that shocked his own party. He fought to reduce carbon emissions before it became a national movement. He battled the budget crisis with decisions that pleased half the state and enraged the other half. Every choice felt like walking on broken glass. He left office with scars, both political and personal. But he thought he had held his family together through the storm. He had no idea the real storm was waiting for him at home. When the truth about Joseph Baena became public, the scandal hit harder than any political attack ever had. Headlines screamed betrayal. Late-night shows mocked him. Commentators dissected his private life as if it were their own property. For a man built on discipline and control, it was a collapse he could not fight with speeches or strength. In interviews afterward, his voice softened. His shoulders, once symbols of invincibility, seemed to carry something heavier than muscle regret. "I caused this. No one else. I hurt my family." He did not hide from the consequences. He respected Maria's decision to leave. He apologized to his children. He accepted that the man who once conquered the world had now broken his own home. But though the world loves a downfall, it also loves a comeback. And Arnold was not done. Not yet. Because redemption, like muscle, is built one painful repetition at a time. For the first time in his life, Arnold Schwarzenegger found himself without a script, without a plan, and without the family he once believed would walk beside him forever. Fame had survived every setback, but fame could not survive the truth. So, at 65, then 70, Arnold began the hardest transformation of his life, rebuilding trust, not with crowds, not with voters, but with the people whose opinions mattered most, with his children. There was no shortcut for this kind of healing. No gym routine, no political strategy. There were only small actions, repeated every day. Phone calls, apologies, honest conversations, showing up even when it was uncomfortable. Listening more than speaking. Slowly, the distance softened. His children, now grown, started to see the man behind the myth. Not the governor, not the action hero, but the father who was trying, truly trying, to earn back a place in their lives. And Joseph Baena, the son the world once treated like a headline, became a real part of Arnold's world. They trained together. They talked openly. Their bond grew from truth, not secrecy. For the first time, Arnold understood something that had escaped him in his rise to greatness. Strength is not the absence of mistakes. Strength is what you do after them. Acting returned. Not with the same noise as before, but with something far deeper. Wisdom, humor, humanity. He filmed new projects, voiced new characters, and even allowed cameras to capture his life for a documentary simply titled Arnold. In it, he did not hide. He did not polish. He told the truth. And millions respected him for it. His work for the environment expanded. His charity efforts increased. His focus shifted from legacy to impact. The muscles were softer, the hair grayer, the face older. But the fire, the one that began in a cold Austrian home, still burned. And just as the world began to see a different side of him, Arnold prepared to face the final chapter of his journey. A chapter not defined by fame, scandal, or power, but by meaning. When the lights fade and the applause becomes only an echo, what is left of a life as large as Arnold Schwarzenegger's, not the trophies, not the headlines, not the box office numbers or the political victories. All of that is noise fading faster than people ever expect. What remains is the journey. The frightened boy who refused to be broken. The young soldier who escaped a military base to chase a dream. The immigrant who arrived in America with nothing but a thick accent and an unshakable belief in himself. The champion who built a body that changed an entire sport. The actor who reshaped Hollywood. The father who made painful mistakes and worked to heal what he hurt. The man who learned that forgiveness is heavier to lift than any weight in a gym. Arnold understands now more than ever that greatness is not a straight line. It is a winding road, full of wrong turns, painful lessons, and second chances. Strength alone cannot protect you. Fame cannot save you. Only honesty, kindness, and the willingness to begin again can carry you forward. At 70, he stands not as a superhero, not as a governor, not as a symbol, but as a man who lived bravely, failed openly, and kept moving. A man who turned pain into fuel, regret into wisdom, and loss into something that could guide others. This is the legacy he leaves behind. Not perfection, but proof. Proof that even after the worst mistakes, even after the world judges you, even after your own heart breaks, you can rise, you can rebuild, you can become better than the person you once were. And that is the real story